Hello everybody, welcome to Alex's Story Time. And today I'm going to share a new story to you. Today's story is come from Zhou, a retired armed police soldier. He enlisted in 2009 and after 3 months of tough basic training, he was assigned to an armed police squadron in a southwestern province. This story is from Zhou's personal experience. The armed police team that Zhou was part of was tasked with guarding the largest prison in the province. We don't need to discuss the specific location. It's enough to say that the story will be clear to everyone. The prison held thousands of prisoners. Zhou's squadron, along with the prison guards, consisted of nearly 1,000 people responsible for the prison's security. One of their tasks was to stand guard. There was a total of 10 watchtowers around the prison, which was built at the foot of the mountain. There were 4 of them on the mountain and 6 at the base. They were numbered from 1 to 10. The watchtower number 6 was the one everyone was unwilling to guard, because it was right next to the morgue. Although the number 6 is popular in Chinese culture, which means good luck, no one wanted to be on duty as the 6th watchtower in this prison. In August 2010, Zhou was on duty and was assigned to the 6th watchtower. What he encountered during this shift was the event of this story. According to the lunar calendar, it was the Chinese Ghost Festival. Zhou remembered this day very clearly because the mountain where the prison was located had many graves, and many villagers had to burn paper money for their ancestors and relatives. The air in the prison was filled with the smell of burning paper all day. Zhou was on duty from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. At 1:40 a.m., Zhou was awakened on time. He got up quickly, went to the bathroom, and then went to the watchtower with the soldiers from his squad. The deputy squad leader went to position 10. Other soldiers went to their respective positions, and the squad leader was in the duty room monitoring the surveillance cameras, overseeing the duty status of all guards. At 1:55 a.m., Zhou arrived at the 6th watchtower. The prison's watchtower was as tall as a 3-story building, with an iron gate at the bottom, locked from the outside. The duty room also had a large door, which was required to be locked from the inside by the duty guard. Both doors were metal and very sturdy. Upon arriving at the duty room, Zhou met Peng, a comrade from the previous shift. Zhou noticed that Peng's face was pale. His face was covered in sweat, and his clothes were soaked with it. Zhou thought it was strange. The duty room had air conditioning, so it shouldn't be that hot. Zhou joked with Peng. "What's up, Peng? Is the air conditioning broken?" Peng didn't say anything, just shook his head. Zhou said, "Are you having kidney deficiency?" Peng still didn't speak. The two of them inspected the firearms and ammunition required for the duty as Peng handed them over to Zhou. After the handover, Peng turned to leave and was about to exit the room when he suddenly turned back to Zhou and said, "Zhou, be careful. Something is a bit eerie tonight. Make sure to lock the second door." Zhou laughed and said, "Oh, don't be ridiculous. My yang energy is much stronger than yours." Peng heard this but did not say anything. He turned and left. His shift was over, and he could go back to the dormitory. Zhou then locked the duty room door and began his duty. The first thing he did was to scan his area with a searchlight, but he didn't find anything unusual. He sat in the duty room and felt a bit sleepy. It was actually a very boring job. Although very important, He was so sleepy that he could hardly keep his eyes open and almost fell asleep sitting there. Suddenly, there seemed to be a noise downstairs. For a midnight shift job, the last thing you want to hear is a noise because it can't be one of your own people. If it were, they would have called in at once. Outsiders who want to enter the duty room can open the first door downstairs, but the second door can only be opened by the duty personnel from inside. And this is a prison. A noise could mean that a prisoner is trying to escape. This is a big deal. If a prison break were to happen and it was later determined that the prisoner escaped from near Zhou's post during his shift, he would be held responsible. So he scanned his inspection area again immediately with the searchlight, but still found nothing unusual. Now, when he listened, there was no noise. Could it have been a mountain cat making a noise? He remembered what Peng said when he left, that today was a bit eerie. What exactly was he talking about? But Zhou didn't dare to keep staring downstairs because it was the morgue, and no one wanted to keep looking at it. Suddenly, there was another noise, and the sound downstairs came again. Strange. Was it the leaders coming to inspect the post? Impossible. Zhou listened carefully. The sound was similar to someone scratching the iron door with their fingernails. A zah sound. Zah, zah. Zhou knew this was definitely not right. He picked up the phone and called the 5th watchtower. Hello, there's a noise downstairs. Please shine a searchlight down to see if there is anything. The other side shone the searchlight over immediately, and the phone was not hung up. The 5th watchtower said, I am observing, and there are no issues. The phone was still connected, but Zhou heard clearly that someone was scratching the iron door downstairs with their fingernails. Zhou didn't say anything, hung up the phone, and began to embolden himself by singing loudly, just to keep himself from being scared. In reality, he was very anxious. Zhou sang loudly, and the noise downstairs seemed to quiet down a bit. Sweat poured down Zhou's body uncontrollably, and soon his clothes were soaked. Suddenly, he felt stars swirling before his eyes, and his vision gradually began to blur until he couldn't see anything. Zhou's first reaction was, No, I'm blind. I can't see anything. Zhou sat down on the ground and reached for the edge of the table, trying to reach the phone. He had to notify his squad leader immediately. When the call was connected, the first thing Zhou said was, Squad leader, I can't see anything. He was already crying when he said this. The squad leader said, Don't worry, stay where you are. I'll send someone to your duty room right away. The call ended, and Zhou could only wait. However, the noise downstairs changed. It was no longer the sound of fingernails scratching the door, but the sound of someone coming upstairs. Dum, 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 dum. Had another soldier come to the duty room? Impossible. It couldn't be that fast. And the footsteps were slow and heavy, thudding step by step up the stairs. Dum, 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 dum. Zhou said he would never forget the sound of those footsteps. It was very clear that it would take at least 5 minutes for the leader to send someone over, and this definitely wasn't his comrade. Then who the hell was it? Zhou shouted, Watchword! There was no answer. only the thudding sound of footsteps coming up the stairs. Dum, dum. The footsteps got closer and closer. Zhou grabbed his rifle, chambered around. I fired at the duty room door based on his sense of direction. Bang! The gun fired, and the footsteps stopped. Zhou was very anxious because blank rounds don't eject automatically. They need to be removed manually. As he removed his spent casing, the footsteps started again. Dum, dum. I fired another shot. Bang! At this moment, he broke down and began to cry. His hands were still removing the casing quickly, but the footsteps had already arrived at the door of his duty room. Suddenly, the phone rang. It was the 5th watchtower calling to inquire about the 2 gunshots. Zhou shouted, "There's a ghost here! There's a ghost here! And it's about to come in." The soldier at the 5th watchtower didn't understand, but the searchlight immediately shone over, saying, "Zhou, that's impossible. Your door hasn't opened, and no one has entered your position." Before Zhou could respond, he noticed that the footsteps were gone. He was wondering what was going on when he clearly heard the sound of fingernails scratching the duty room door. At that moment, Zhou felt he was about to lose his mind. He ejected the 3rd blank round, loaded a live one, and aimed towards the door. He told himself that if the door opened, whoever came through, he would fire. But he was so tense that he pulled the trigger straight at the door. The iron door took the hit with a soundless bang. Then Zhou heard the sound of boots pounding up the stairs below, a soldier shouting his name as he ran. His comrades had finally come. The tension drained out of him in an instant, and he blacked out. When Zhou woke up again, he was in a hospital with a comrade watching over him. "Oh my God, you're finally awake," the comrade said. "I carried you down. Your face was so white as milk. Your lips were purple, and your clothes could squeeze out water. We were very worried." Zhou had been taking glucose in hospital, and the doctor said he had a high fever. Zhou didn't believe it. He did not feel sick. So how could he suddenly have a fever? Later, when Zhou was discharged and returned to the team, the instructor talked to him about this incident. Zhou recounted his experience that night, but the instructor did not say anything about it. He only told Zhou that he couldn't tell anyone about what he experienced. Then Zhou was reassigned to a clerical job in a logistic department. Zhou never saw Peng from his duty shift again and never had the chance to ask him what he encountered. Zhou remembers every detail of that terrifying night in August 2010, but to this day, he doesn't know what he really experienced. Okay, everybody, this is the end of the whole story. Please share what you think of the story and your stories. If you enjoy my work and would like to help me continue to bring this story to you, please subscribe to my channel or like my page. Give a thumbs up to the stories you appreciate, and share your thoughts, opinions in the comments. I'd love to read them. Share the stories with anyone who might find them enjoyable. And everyone, I need a co-editor, a native English speaker to make these stories better. Thank you, everybody. This is Alex's Story Time, and I am Alex. I got a lot of good stories to share with you. See you next time. Bye-bye.